Jump
Hi
in, Brent.
everyone, welcome to today's coffee break. I'm Brandon Viroff. I'm a member of the Education Committee. We're excited to feature this networking opportunity with our Missouri Gateway Green Building Council. Today, we have some members and maybe some non-members of so thank you for joining us. Our chapter, like many other nonprofits throughout the country, rely on funding, and the biggest source is through our memberships. If you aren't already a member, please consider joining us. The goal of our coffee breaks is to provide an opportunity for our community to engage in conversational hot topics over a cup of coffee and just a short 30-minute break. Our theme for today's conversation is an all-inclusive, wise way to build. And you might see a little bit of a rebrand there by our guest speakers. So today I'm excited to introduce our special guests, Tom and Carol Braford. Tom and Carol are co-founders of Irresistible Community Builders. They've created a model for forming communities where people live and work in cooperation with their neighbors and in harmony with nature. They received an award of excellence from the International Green Industry Hall of Fame for this work. They're creating an Arizmendi Ecovillage in St. Louis. They are committed to a world that works with everyone, with no one left out. Tom has an extensive background in historic preservation and is the inventor of the suite of 5Rs building technologies. And Carol is a CPA and worked in the corporate world for over 20 years conducting audits internationally and spent 10 years as regional coordinator for Citizens Climate Lobby, coaching volunteers in 4 states to work with our local communities and members of Congress to pass effective climate legislation. So just some guidelines before we get started. Please be respectful of others, allow others to join in the conversation, be mindful of not jumping over anyone speaking, and feel free to talk though without being called upon. But if you do have something you want to add in the conversation and you feel like you really want to get in there but can't, just sort of use a reaction below and I'll try to get you in it. And as well as just try to keep yourself muted unless speaking to avoid any background noise. And without further ado, Tom and Carol.
Okay.
Hi.
Tom, you want to ask the big question?
Yeah, so we want to provoke you a little bit to start here. So I would like you to consider what if it were possible to solve what if it were as easy to solve global warming as getting your dog to catch a Frisbee? We contend that it is, and that's part of what we'll share with you today.
Great. Yeah, so we're going to share with you a vision for eco-villages, lots of eco-villages, and we're calling it now Post-Carbon Communities of Practice. So you'll learn more about that as we go on. So Emily, if you want to go to the next slide, we're going to talk about 4 different aspects of these communities. One is co-housing, one is urban agriculture, co-ops, and renewable energy. Next. So have you heard of co-housing before? I can't really see all of you, but co-housing is something that's been around in the US for 40 years. I could hardly believe that it's been maybe 35 or 40 years. And what you see from this example is that what's one of the unique things about the design of co-housing is that typically you look out your window onto a grassy area or a garden. You don't notice what's not there is cars. You often see people who live there or who are visiting. One of the features of co-housing that I really love is that it's typical in most communities to have dinner with your neighbors several times a week. Some communities don't do it that often, but you might be on a team to help fix dinner once a month, but there's dinner in the common house, the shared space. Everybody has their own unit. It can be fairly small because of the common house that has a lot of shared facilities, including a wonderful kitchen and dining room. Okay, next. In each of these parts, we're going to share a little bit about who we're collaborating with. And this is a key one. With co-housing, the people who brought it to the United States from Denmark are Katie McCammont and Chuck Durrett. And they came back when they discovered it there, they came back and wrote the book on it. And they've written other books on it now since. They're both architects, and they designed our first co-housing community and have continued to work with us. They've been to St. Louis more than once for workshops. And it's just really wonderful to collaborate with them. Next. So co-housing, we could talk about the whole time on co-housing, but urban agriculture, just having children be able to learn how to grow their own food and prepare it, that's what I love about urban agriculture. But having it available, fresh, healthy food year round. We're going to have hanging, what do you call them?
Hanging gardens,
Hanging gardens.
over seasonally enclosable courtyards.
Yeah, so really cool to actually be able to do that. And if you look at the next slide, the person that we're collaborating with a lot on this is James Forbes, who's calls his company Good Life Growing. I love these pictures. The top one is the before, just an empty lot. And look what he made of it. Places where people in the neighborhood can come learn to garden. We live pretty close to, our Ecovillage site is pretty close to Metro High School. And when we first started our garden, we knew the biology teacher, and she would bring kids over, and they'd also show up without her. One day I looked out and she was leading a tour herself. She must not have been able to reach us. She just led the tour herself. So wonderful things like that. And if you look at the next slide, you can see all these different people that James, all different organizations that James has collaborated with over the years. This was just so many different people. He does a lot of work on the north side. And Justine Peterson is a CDFI, if you know what that is, but a nonprofit that works with housing and small businesses. So we work with them a lot too. We actually, and the Sweet Potato Project, see that one? I didn't realize that James was collaborating with them. That's really cool. Yeah. Okay. And then next, the third part, we go to the next slide. Third part is co-ops. They're all different sorts of co-ops, but we're focusing mostly on worker-owned co-ops. Mondragon is actually a city in Spain where worker-owned co-ops got started after the Spanish Civil War had pretty much decimated the city. And a priest came together and found 5 guys who started the first co-op. Mondragon co-ops now account for over 10% of the economy of Spain. Isn't that amazing? They brought it to the US, and when they discovered that we have what am I trying to say? Unions in the United States. They were struggling to get people to understand the social aspects of what they were doing with their co-ops in Europe when they tried to acquire other companies. But when they came to the US, they said, oh, you get the social part. So they immediately formed a big partnership with the steelworkers, the United Steelworkers in Cleveland, and started what they call Evergreen Laundry. Tom actually went to visit it once. And there are just so many aspects of the power of cooperatives. One of them is that governance system that I mentioned at the beginning. So if you look at the next slide, we make decisions. So here are the 5 R's that we mentioned before, all the different aspects of what could become a co-op, the people that we train to build the system, the people that build all the renewable energy systems, the ripe co-op, that's the gardening, the permaculture stuff. Yeah. And then Tom, you want to talk about Raft?
So Raft is this rapid alternative freight and transit. It's a raised platform podcar system. We've partnered with this group in Colorado that's been promoting this program for years because we know as part of USGBC that 30% of our carbon footprint in the city is from buildings. And the other 30%, another 30% in our region is transportation. And so we're committed to a post-carbon future for both buildings and transportation, because if we're going to get to net zero by 2050, we've got to have some projects that go well beyond that and actually sequester carbon in long-lasting products. And between the housing and the freight system, which will utilize recycled windmill blades to cut the cost of this raised platform system. So
yeah,
is that enough for now?
Yeah, that's plenty. So what the people that we're partnering with on this one include Michael Peck. He's the Mondragon representative in the US, and we're one of the pilots. And at the last conference that we went to in Cincinnati, which we go to every other year, where they're creating all this stuff for co-ops, worker-owned co-ops, Michael introduced a whole way of using the UN development goals to measure the impact in a really good way. So that's what we're talking about, where we're that last one.
Yeah, so we're now part of the Own the Metrics program that is being launched by the UN to try to impact greenwashing and cherry picking so that we can really get to net zero and post-carbon.
Yeah. Okay, next. And then we're going to just zip through this because we've kind of covered it already. All sorts of renewable energy use, just a lot of different things. And if you want to look at the next, and it's all very innovative. We're working with Sim van der Rijn. He was the youngest state architect in California ever. He taught at UC Berkeley for years, and he is our partner because he knew someone from St. Louis that we worked with. So it's really wonderful. We visited him a couple times. He's written all sorts of books. And look at the next slide. We won't really get into it, but this is how he illustrates his books and how he taught his students. And he's got a whole eco resort up in Marin County. He's just wonderful and has such a great perspective.
The New York Times back in the 60s or 70s did a bit of article on him. They called to him the intrepid pioneer of the eco frontier. Right. And that's really what he is. Just amazing guy. He came to St. Louis for 10 days and kind of took St. Louis by storm a couple of years ago.
Okay, let's look at the last slide. So what we're doing right now is working on trying to get some of the RAM settlement money. If you don't know about that, I'm going to just put this in the chat. There's a link to it. They're entering a new phase today. There's $250 million from the money that the city got when the Rams left and broke their contract years ago. And the Board of Aldermen has done a wonderful job of coming up with getting lots of ideas. And they're now at a phase where if you even just put in the part that ends with EN / you'll go right to that page where the priority challenges, but just look for the priority challenges and you can give your comments. And we're going to be putting comments in there starting today about our project, the part that's just at the very beginning.
And the longer link will take you directly to our solution.
Yes, you can read that first.
Which is post-carbon communities of practice.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so what I want to know is, before we get to your questions, I want to hear from you anything that you saw or heard about that may have left you with questions, but that started to really resonate with you, or that appeals to you or intrigues you. And we invite you to, I'd say we could take down the slides, Emily, so we can see people if they raise their hands. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Great. So if you just click on reactions at the bottom, then you can, is that where it is these days? Yeah, you can raise your hand right there, or you could just unmute and start talking. It's fine. What did you hear that left you questioning, or at least curious to know more, or that kind of
I think
Yeah.
for me, it was the
what-
co-housing. What's the difference between co-housing and duplex? I definitely see less cars, more greenery for sure.
Mhm.
What does that look like? And then the slide before the last slide, that graph of
Yeah.
places, learning. I don't know, it was a lot on there, but
Yeah.
that
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can read to you, Jasmine. That's really cool because what it says was that place was at the bottom, and he's talking about how children learn. They learn best not from abstraction, but by direct experience of place. As their minds and brains grow, they begin to learn patterns and later the processes that shape our world. So that's the way he taught. He also illustrates all his books with his own watercoloring.
wow.
Yeah.
And he did
That's
a
good.
watercolor of me while he was here. So I
Yeah.
say I now have an original by one of the Dutch
Because
masters.
his name is Sim van der Rijn. He's from the Netherlands, as is my family. Yeah. So we can get to your question in a minute, but does anybody else have anything you'd like to say about what you heard that intrigued you? And, there are people from the Green
That's
Building Council that could certainly jump in too.
That just reminds me of a concept called the hidden curriculum. So one of the things of how people become more sustainably literate is from this concept of called the hidden curriculum, and it's like places and basically being immersed in like an area of the things that are around them, but not intentional sort of curriculum that people are being taught, or like co-curricular activities really influence someone's sustainability literacy.
That's really cool. Yeah. Hmm. We include a lot of things in our, even right now before the Ecovillage is live, we've got more than one beehive because
Yeah.
we have a friend who captures wild bees and creates hives for them, and he takes care of them and we get the honey. Isn't that great? He even harvests the honey for us.
And we're looking at having an on-site preschool and kindergarten through third grade that's parent involved, walkable education. So the idea is that each of these communities will serve the families that live in them, but also the friends of the children that live in the surrounding community.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A lot about learning. Yeah. Anything else that people see that resonated with you or that intrigued you, or at any point we can just start answering questions as well. So if you have a question, you could ask it, and I'll come back to you, John.
I'll just jump in. I'm intrigued by the co-housing proposal as well, because I feel like that's my background is in architecture, so a lot of students will work on co-housing models in their designs, but you're not seeing it as much out in the world. So I think it's something that is very intriguing to the younger generation, but it's also been around forever. It's
Yeah.
and it's been adopted in other places, and even places in the US for a long time. So I think it would be interesting to see what that would look like in an urban environment. And I'm also very intrigued by the co-op, because I feel like the cooperative structure is a tool, could be a tool of equitable tool,
Exactly.
ownership of kind of shared ownership of the resources and the potential products coming out of the agriculture if there are other things produced as well. So
Yes.
that's, very fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Our
Thanks, May.
our philosophy of affordable housing is that the best way to create it is pay the workers that build it a family wage, and then they'll be able to afford to live there. And if we keep building more and more of them, then they'll be employed permanently. And that's what we plan to do with our 5 R's technologies. To workforce training and development's a big part of it. We know there's a limited skilled workforce in St. Louis, and we plan to work with the unions to add a certification program for all the different unions, the electricians that will install the PVT solar collector system and the ground source heating and cooling systems, and maintain all those systems.
And the Carpenters Union, of course.
Oh yeah, and
he
the
used
Carpenters
to be for years.
yeah,
the apprenticeship programs.
they've already. We already have. I don't know. We'll have to update it, but we have an inside trade agreement with the carpenters that would let us have the same crews manufacture the systems at one wage, and then come out in the field. So keeping them employed year round. One of the challenges, I'm an ex carpenters union.
Okay, so I want to go back to Jasmine. Is that how you pronounce your name? Yeah, I know you said what you said initially, really with a question behind it. So I don't want to step over the fact that you really did ask a question. So you were talking about how co-housing is, how that's different from a duplex or something like that. And what I see in St. Louis is lots of different kinds of communities where the main focus is building community, getting to know your neighbors. From our generation, we think, okay, the neighborhoods like we grew up in, where we knew all our neighbors and we could stop at anybody's door and talk to them. And it was a great place to live because you felt really safe in your neighborhood all the time. And so these communities, there actually are a lot of them in St. Louis that aren't necessarily exactly co-housing, but they don't worry about what they call it, and there's a fair amount of it because we've been working on this. Jess Watson, who runs Earth Day 365, lives in a community that she and her husband have created.
Yeah.
So
one of the things that's a little different about what we're doing is we're taking it to a scale that can impact things like housing affordability and transportation, and also a scale that meets Robin Dunbar's 4 areas of social support. 3 people as confidants, 12 to 15 as work parties, 35 to 50 as a co-housing neighborhood of proximity, 150 as the maximum level, designed by our frontal cortex as the number of people that we can actually know and interact on a regular basis with personally.
So that would be an eco-village.
Yeah, and
no bigger than that.
He now has said that in the era of social media that maybe we can expand that to 200, but that's kind of the absolute limit.
We have 2 minutes left. Who has another question? Did we miss any? James, do you have a question?
Well, I was just going to say, I was going to kind of key in on part of what Maeve said, and I think you guys really touched on it, that the concept of the idea of kind of a co-housing development being, in a sense, kind of an anchor of an eco-village, because I think that's what you guys are kind of talking about. Because one thing, not everybody wants to live in a co-housing situation with that degree of closeness, but the type of services and support that you're talking about, I think that's really what, that's probably what everybody is really looking at. And it's kind of interesting as a parallel. I'm involved on a team for the redevelopment of the Clinton Peabody housing complex. And we've had about 10 months of workshops and master planning effort where we've been working with the current residents of Clinton Peabody. And last night we had a meeting where we were just doing a storytelling exercise, wanting them to kind of say, you know, when they moved in, what their experiences were, what they thought of living in Clinton Peabody in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and a lot of it was based around exactly what you were saying before, that there was a sense of community, there was a sense of neighbors, people being outside, people watching out for each other. And so then you have the question of, why did that exist prior and why isn't it there now? And what does it take to rebuild that? Because we can rebuild the buildings, we can replace the buildings, but that's not going to necessarily lead to that outcome. And it takes more than just the structures to get to that outcome.
Yeah, the social piece, people getting to know each other again, all over again. And I see we're at time. Emily, it really did go fast. You said it would.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
And
all
it
of you.
would have been nice if there were more people, but I think it was really great to have an intimate little group like this.
Yes, yes.
We have had more people register, but I think it's Friday and it's beautiful outside. So
yeah.
Yes, really.
well,
And I
Carol,
think there's a lot of colds going around.
yeah, that too.
And
Carol and Tom, thank you so much for your presentation. This was great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks
was
everyone
great.
for coming.
All right.
Well, and be sure to check out the link that they shared to the Citizen Lab stuff on the Ram settlement. So
Yeah, that will give you a lot more in-depth insight into what we're up to.
Yeah. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
have a great day.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for joining.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.